Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another segment of the Docket, the program that brings you legal issues that affect our community and the people in it. My name is Bob Warwick, and our guests today are the Honorable Yahara Lisa Gutierrez, Judge of the 65th District Court here in El Paso, and Michael Shane, an attorney who does a lot of work in her court and appears in front of her often. So let's get started. Judge, thanks for coming and visiting with us today. So let's just start. I know you have Michael Shane here, an attorney who works in your court, but give us sort of an overview of the child protective cases that come in front of you and what the process is.
Well, what happens is normally we have a reporter, somebody who calls the 1-800 number to report abuse or neglect. CPS is then goes and investigates to see what the conditions are or what's going on. If they find that the child or children are in immediate danger to their physical health, then they file a petition to remove the children. Then they come to me on an ex parte, which is just me and the Department of Family and Protective Services. And then I review that. I review their affidavit to see if I find that the children or the child is in immediate danger. If I do, then I sign the affidavit and they can remove the children.
When you say report, is that report an anonymous report?
Yes, it's anonymous.
And when you say removal, why don't you explain what that means? I mean, they're with their parents and you say remove, where do they go?
Right, so CPS, they have two options. They can either remove before coming to me for me to sign that order, or they wait until I sign the order to remove, depending on the situation. But the removal is CPS will go many times with a police escort and remove the children from the home and place them in a foster home or in a shelter to provide for the children's safety.
And I think at one point when we were talking about this, you talked about a kinship placement?
Yes, they also, another thing that CPS does is they try to see if there is another placement. Maybe there's a grandmother, maybe there's an aunt, a grandfather. And so if we don't have those options at that time, then we remove, but then they continue searching for relatives or maybe even fictive kin, maybe a neighbor who has contact with the children. We always try to do the least restrictive type of environment for these kids. Often we don't have that right away, so they get put in a shelter or foster home as CPS continues to look for another placement.
And I'm sure there are all sorts of, I just thought of this, all sorts of things that you have to sort of make work together. So if the kids are of school age, do you, let's say they're placed in, let's say they were going to El Paso, now they're in the Socorro district. Still arrangements are made to keep them in the El Paso district?
No, unfortunately, no. I mean, CPS tries to do everything they can, but oftentimes we can't find a foster home that is in the same district. And that is one of the, aside from this child being traumatized by being removed from their home and from their parents, so now we have to change school districts. So now we have to change schools, further traumatizing this child. So they try, and if they can do it, they will, but oftentimes it's just not possible.
Maybe we'll have Mr. Shane here go talk to the districts and make arrangements for that. And how long have you been the judge of this court and dealing with these?
I've been on the bench in the 65th since 2009. So it'll be 12 years.
So a lot of experience with this. What's the mission of the court in these cases?
Well, the mission of the court and of the Department of Family and Protective Services is always to reunify with the parent. We always feel, and the state of Texas feels that the best placement for children are with their parents.
Right.
Now, if that parent cannot provide a safe environment for these children, then we have no choice but to remove them and unfortunately, oftentimes terminate parental rights.
And in the removal process, there's lots of protections for the kids and the parents, and we're going to go to Mike in a minute. But give me an overview, if you would, of who is involved in these types of hearings.
Well, once I decide to sign the order approving the removal of the children, I appoint lawyers to the children. The child or children they have their own lawyers. I appoint a lawyer to the mother, and I appoint lawyers to the father or fathers. Sometimes we have several fathers. And then also I appoint CASA to be the guardian ad litem for the children. And so from the very beginning, they have appointed lawyers. Now, the parents then have to come and show that they're indigent. And so if they are in fact indigent, then they get to keep those lawyers. If they are not, then they have to hire their own counsel.
And CASA is court-appointed special advocate, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And we've done a program with Eric Beret and Wendy Siegel. She's a CASA volunteer, and that's all volunteer.
Yes.
And they go through a lot of training also to do that. Is that correct?
That's true. I call CASAs God's people because, everybody has jobs and families and lives, and they don't have to do any of this. They don't have to go through that training.
Right.
They don't have to go, interview foster parents and school administrators, but they do it for the children. And I think to me that's just so admirable.
And it's got to be an emotional roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely. It is because, everybody has an agenda. Everybody has, their own thing that they have to do. Mr. Shane has to represent his client. And here we have this CASA who sometimes I think might feel intimidated by lawyers, by somebody like Mr. Shane, but they, they're trucking along, trying to speak for this child.
To do their best.
Yes, to do their best.
So, Mike, let's talk to you for a minute.
Sure.
How long have you been doing this?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us to come.
Absolutely.
I've been doing these cases since 1999.
Wow.
Long time.
Yeah. It's terrible how old we all are. And I win, but okay.
Yeah.
Explain what an ad litem is, would you?
Okay, well, the ad litem, and it's kind of the same for both children and parents, and I do both. But you're appointed to be the attorney for your client. When you represent a child or children in a case, you represent them and what they want done if they're old enough to tell you. If they're younger, you can substitute your judgment. Then you're looking at what's in the best interest of the child, as the CASA would do.
Right.
But if you represent a parent, you're there to protect their constitutional rights and their rights to be a parent for these children. So you get an order. We get 2 orders the first day we know about it. We get the original petition filed by the department that outlines here's all the allegations. And then we get an order appointing us to either represent the child or the parents. And our job, just like any other client I have, my job is to zealously represent my client.
Notwithstanding, you might not feel that's in the best interest of your client. You have to represent them based on what they're telling you they want.
Sure, and we have more of a conflict with that with parents.
Right.
Because in these types of cases, a parent to get services might be in their best interest, but they may decide, I don't want to do services. I want my child back immediately. And after the initial removal, the court has 14 days to have what's called an adversary hearing, where now the parents are represented by counsel, and we can go in and make our argument the removal was improper. And we can present evidence. It's almost like a criminal grand jury where the defense attorney isn't there, but now we're there to represent the parents or the children.
So let's just talk about the parents for a minute. What is generally their reaction to something like this, your first meeting with them?
I think they're traumatized as well. Some of them are non-offending parents, where say they're not living together, you have a mother who's accused of negligent supervision, you have a father who's not in town or wasn't part of it. They're all in shock going, we don't understand the process. But they're traumatized. My first meeting with them is typically, let's go over how this process is going to work, get them comfortable with that, and then we start talking about the allegations and how we're going to proceed with the case.
And I think this was something interesting. I should have realized this, but I didn't, speaking with you and the judge earlier, that each parent is given an attorney and each child is given an attorney in case they have different they want a different end result. Is that correct?
Yeah, the parents are definitely each given an attorney, and we may have a mother who has 3 children. 2 may be with one gentleman, and 1 may be with another gentleman. Yet both dads are in the case, so they each get their own attorney, and we give them to the parents that way because they may have a conflict of interest. Quite often, we have one parent saying, "Not my fault. I want my children. I want to be the primary." And the other parent saying the exact same thing.
Right.
For the children, initially there's one attorney for the children. It could be 1 up to I've had 6. And as long as all the kids want the same thing, that attorney can represent all the children. If we get to a point where some of the children want to be reunited with mom, some want to be reunited with dad or both, then we have to let the judge know we have a conflict, and then new attorneys have to be appointed for the children.
Well, and Judge, what about other issues that might come up when Mike is in front of you and representing his client? Does child support ever pop up in any of these hearings? I mean, if whichever parent was supposed to pay child support and didn't, does that ever?
Yeah, it does. Usually our kids are in foster care or with fictive kin. And with foster care, of course, we don't worry about child support. But sometimes they are with a grandmother or something, and those issues have come. Rarely, because usually we have indigent parents that are not going to pay. There are situations sometimes where at the end of the case, if we decide not to terminate parental rights, and let's say, for example, grandmother has the kids, I will order that mother to pay child support. But I kind of know that it's not going to happen. Because, if you have a mother who's a drug addict or is mentally ill and isn't working, it's probably not going to happen. But we can always try.
Do you, we hadn't discussed this, so I'm surprising you with this question, but do you have any idea what the percentage is of after a year, let's say, where the parent's supposed to get services and so on? What is the percentage of kids that actually go back with a parent as opposed to the percentage of kids that stay in foster care?
Oh my goodness. I would say, I don't know, maybe 20% go back with the parent.
So it's a small
percentage.
number.
It's a small number. It's well below 50%. You wish it was better, but the reason they're in these cases to begin with is the parents have some problems.
Right.
And even if they try services, sometimes that's not good enough. We certainly celebrate the cases where the child goes back with the parents. The good thing about these cases is the child is always in a better position. Either they are returned to the parents who have done services and have got their life together, or the child gets an opportunity to have a life with somebody else.
And what happens, so after the year, where you have, both of you, done your best to have the parent take the services, get their life back together so they can get their kids back. But after that year, if it doesn't happen, are the parental rights terminated?
If they haven't done their services. Now, by law, at the beginning of the case, I have to admonish the parents, and I have to let them know that we have 1 year to work on this case. And if they haven't complied with what they needed to do, and that's services, that's finding a place for them to live with their children, a safe place, getting a job. It's a lot for these parents. And so I let them know that we've got 1 year. And after that 1 year, if we come back, they haven't done services, they're not working, they don't have a place to live, things like that, then unfortunately, yes, then I will have to terminate their rights.
When a parent's rights are terminated, parental rights are terminated, the kids are then available to be adopted, is that
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And when a parent's rights are terminated, are they prohibited from seeing the kids?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, their name isn't even on the birth certificate anymore.
Right.
I mean, it's as if it never happened. They never existed, unfortunately.
And the judge's admonishment is not the only time they're told that.
Oh, I bet.
Every attorney who represents parents, we continually tell our clients, look, this is what you have to do. And not only do the services, you have to learn from the services, because anybody can take a parenting class, but if the interactions at the visits are not good, say the dad comes in and he's on his phone the whole time, or he's not interacting with his children, yes, you did the services, but you haven't learned from the services. So every attorney tells their clients probably every time they talk to them, where are you at? What are you doing? If they're not doing it, it's you understand you're setting yourself up for failure.
So in that year, how often are hearings held to see how the parents are progressing?
Well, there's a status hearing that's done, I think, within 60 days, and then we have a permanency hearing to see if they found any relatives maybe. So this is an ongoing process. It's not just the parents, doing their therapies and things like that. CPS is also working in trying to find family members, trying to find anybody where we could take these children out of foster care and place them.
Right.
So they're doing that. So we have hearings throughout this year, and it could be sometimes we might have a dad that shows up and says, "I want these kids. I want my kid," and so we have a placement hearing, or we have a grandmother So there's different issues that come up throughout. So there's always contact throughout this year with these parents.
Who reported? So I'm thinking about the year is coming to an end, and you have to now make a decision as to whether the kids are going to be placed back with the parent, or they're going to have their rights terminated, and these kids are going to be in another track, basically. Who reports that to you?
CPS does.
CPS always files what's called a permanency report, where they say, here's where everybody's at. CASA files an update to the court, report of the CASA guardian ad litem, before every hearing. And in a good case, where they're going to be reunited, there's about 7 standard hearings that we have.
Okay.
In a case that's not going well, there may be a number of hearings. It may be the department requesting, Judge, we'd like a hearing so you can re-admonish the parents. Or there may be, Judge, we need a hearing to cut off visitation with the parents. They're entitled normally supervised visitation at the beginning. Or if the case is going well, an attorney for the parent may say, Judge, I need a hearing to expand visitation, or we need a placement hearing with a relative. The department wants this placement, mom wants this placement, dad wants this placement, and we all come in and say, here's what's in the best interest of the child. So there's various hearings, but it is a continual process throughout the year where the judge is given notification from all the parties. Rare that a parent would file something, but we normally file a motion. So I'd say within a year, there's at least 7 contacts with the court, if not more than that.
And there's some times when that parent is doing so well that they've done everything they're supposed to. Everybody's happy, and they'll come to me and they'll say, can we do a return and monitor? So it doesn't have to be the whole year.
Right.
Just as with when a case is not going well, let's say we have absent parents, like they just haven't shown up, and then we can do this sooner too.
It's a tough way to make a living, I think.
These can be some very hard hearings, but at the end of the day, if the case goes well, they can be a great final hearing.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what you have to do to be qualified to be an ad litem, Mike.
To be an ad litem, there's a continuing legal education course we take. I'd say it's about a day and a half or 2 days worth, where we go over, here's all the laws, here's what you need to do, here's your mandates from the court. When you're representing a child, it's different than when you're representing a parent. We talked about that a little bit. When you represent a parent, that's who you get directions from, whether they follow your legal advice or not.
Right.
But that's who you have to represent in the court, and we go in and we make the best argument we can. When you represent a child, if they're very, very young, you're using your substituted ideas of what should be the best interest of the child. So sometimes you're on the same side as CASA and the department. Sometimes they're not on the same side. It's a real big dynamic. But to get trained up, you've got to do that CLE. And then one thing that the court does is you always start off representing children. It gets you in.
Is it the bottom line that the bottom line of all of this is what's in the best interest of the child?
That's what directs the court.
Okay.
Representing a parent, not always.
No, right. But I
but
understand
the overall goal
Yeah.
is what's in the best interest of the child, to remove them either under emergency circumstances or with an ex parte hearing with just the judge, it's to protect the children.
Yeah.
And what's in their best interest, which is, like I said, the good thing about this case is it's normally always better for the child, no matter how it ends.
Yeah. And with only a 20%, maybe a 20% rate of kids going back, it's not such a great commentary on parenthood.
Right. Well, they do the best they can, but we such a lack of resources in the community for people with mental illness, drug addiction. So a lot of times people just they don't have the services to begin with, and then they can't do it, and then then their kids end up in our system.
Well, I just want to say to both of you, thank you. I mean, it doesn't get any more important than protecting and looking out for the welfare of the kids. But before we're done, I know your court is involved in a number of special programs. One of them, I want to go through, I think 3 of them we spoke about. One of them is called INQUA, or ICWA?
ICWA, yes. It's the Indian Child Welfare Act. And that's a federal act that was enacted to protect children that were Native Americans. What was happening is children were being removed from tribes, and then they were being raised in non-tribal homes.
Right.
And so those children never got to have that cultural enrichment that they should have. And so they enacted this, the ICWA, it's what it's called, to make sure that courts are doing everything that we can to get those children back to their tribes so that they can be raised with their customs, with the Native American culture. And so I was asked by the Isleta del Sur tribe to start an ICWA court. There were only 15 in the United States. This is the only one in Texas. And so whenever we have families that have Native American heritage, we kind of put those aside, and they become part of the ICWA court. And there's just different things that we have to do with them. They require more care. We have to look for tribal homes for them, maybe tribal foster homes. And so I'm very proud of us starting the only ICWA court in Texas. And so far we've been doing it for 8 months, and we've already had 5 reunifications where children were returned to their families. And so I'm really proud of the work that the lawyers have done and our ICWA court has.
Have you been involved in any of these?
I have been, and they're more intense. You talked about a number of hearings. We have a ICWA staffing every month or 2 months where the court will bring all the attorneys in. Every attorney in the case will talk about that case. Sometimes it's good for our clients and sometimes it's not, but then the parents come in later where the judge gets to talk to those parents each time and congratulate them when they're doing really well, or
admonish them.
Admonish them a little bit, such a hard word, but it's to give them that encouragement that we're still all here for you, please. And then we have the tribes that come in as well. I mean, the tribe is a party to that lawsuit as well. So they get that support on top of everything else that's being supported.
And how many of these have you said you've gotten back to the?
5. We've had 5 reunifications, and as a matter of fact, in February, our tribe has, we're going to call it the Reunification Day, and it's going to be like a celebration of these families that have been reunified, and it's going to be done at the reservation, and we're going to have the customary celebration dances and outfits and all that. So it's going to be great. I can't wait.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. It's always nice to have something to celebrate. So now tell me about, there's something called Grant Systems of Care.
Yeah, so right now the 65th is, along with other partners, the Child Guidance Center, and different partners, we are applying for a grant, and it's a $4 million grant. And this is to provide services for children who are victims of serious trauma. And what this will do is this will bring in like a one-stop shop of providers from the community to immediately bring these children in, bring the families in, and let's see how we can help this family and this child with the trauma that they've suffered. It's a 4-year grant given by the Department of Justice. And so, we're hoping that we can do that, and I think we can better serve these kids. If we can take care of that trauma early on, then that will make a more productive adult. And that's what we want to do.
And so do you have, is this in existence right now, or you've applied for it?
No, we're applying. We're applying for that, for the systems of care, yes.
And are any place else in Texas have that you know of? No.
No.
So you're doing really unique things here.
We're trying, we're trying to think outside the box.
Yeah, that's terrific. Now, tell me about National Adoption Day. And I think November is National Adoption Month.
Yes, that's exactly right. You say National Adoption Day, and I just get all warm and fuzzy.
Well, I have 2 grandkids who were adopted, so
Well, yeah. So National Adoption Day is the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and that's the day it always is. And so we have families that come and that are adopting children that were victims of abuse or neglect, which is our CPS kids. And so we have this huge celebration at the courthouse where, for example, the Women's Bar Association provides goodie bags for these children. When I mean goodie bags, I mean toys. I mean, we have like a $50 limit, but the Women's Bar Association, they spend a ton of money on these kids. And so each kid gets a goodie bag. We provide, again, it's people that are donating, gift cards. So for these families for their Thanksgiving dinner, because a lot of times it's grandmothers who are adopting these kids, or relatives, and maybe they don't have a whole lot of money. So if we can provide them with money for groceries, then that's what we do. They get their first family portrait. CPS brings in a photographer, and they get their first family portrait. CASA donates frames for those family portraits, and each child gets a frame for their first family portrait. The court then gets that portrait, and we make Christmas cards so that they can send out to their family and friends as their first Christmas cards as family. So it's really a joyful, just beautiful thing.
Again, a celebration. That's what we want to do.
And sometimes a celebration with 30 family members.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's true.
family members come in from all over the country and all over the world.
Wow.
To help celebrate
Right.
this new member of the family coming in.
Yeah, no,
So
it's awesome.
it's a great day.
Right. Terrific. I have 2 other things, and then we're going to have to go. One is, and again, I just learned this morning, so this is a question for you, Your Honor. You mentioned to me that kids who get into this system, they are provided with college, and
Yes,
tell me a little bit about
yeah,
it.
if there is a child who became where the department, and this is the Department of Family and Protective Services, has become the permanent managing conservator, which means I've terminated their parental rights. They're in foster care. And even if they're adopted, they get full tuition at a state school. And so, unfortunately, not all of them take advantage of it, but it's there for whoever wants it. As long as it's a state school in Texas, you get free college.
That's terrific.
And so if you adopt a child, which I encourage everybody, whoever's thinking about adoption, to adopt one of our children, you'll be adopting this child, and you won't have to pay for college.
Yeah, like I said, I should have adopted my kids.
Right.
And Mike, just one very quick question. How many ad litems are there?
I think there are about 20 ad litems. Some of them solely do children. I think that's about 9 to 10.
And then the rest do?
The rest do parents, and many of them do parents and children as well.
Well, listen, I want to thank you both. These are 2 of my favorite people. You hear what they do. They do well for the community. They do important work. I hope you enjoyed our program today, and then come back next week for the next one. Thank you, everybody.